How can we stimulate our creativity on a more regular and consistent basis? Last episode, I was talking to the wonderful Aban, singer-songwriter. If you haven't listened yet, she's fantastic, and we had an interesting conversation about creativity and finding your creative flow. After our chat, I got really interested in how to get creative on demand, so to speak, rather than just waiting for inspiration. How can we stimulate our creativity on a more regular and consistent basis? This is a topic that I've been interested in anyway, because I'm writing this book and making this podcast. And although what I do is science and wellness, to me, this is a creative expression of sorts. It's me learning and putting together ideas and sharing them in a creative and actionable way. It's my art. So for this quick tip episode, I thought I would look at the science, go through some practical examples, and give you some ideas on how to bring more creative flow into your life. And if you're not looking to be more creative, let me preface this by saying that creative flow isn't just for artists. It's about creative thought and inspiration and feeling inspired by what you're doing, whether it's professional or personal. Welcome to the XO Conversations podcast. My name is Dr. Rishma Walji. I'm a former clinician and academic, and now I spend my time taking science into the real world, trying to make my life and yours more extraordinary. If you're looking to live your own XO life, check out all my resources at livingxo.com. A good place to start is my free quiz to find out your decision-making style. Are you likely to move towards your goal or get pulled into different directions along the way? Check it out at livingxo.com/quiz. Psychologist and researcher Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes the state of flow as a state of concentration or complete absorption in an activity. It's when you're so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. You're in the zone. And you could be doing any number of activities: running, cooking, painting, gardening. The idea is that it's a positive mental state when you're completely absorbed and focused and feeling your best. Today, I'll focus on flow in the context of creativity, but the idea is widely applicable. When you're in flow, you're in a state of complete concentration. You become so focused that everything else falls away. You can even lose track of time. You also become one with the actions that you're doing. It's what they call a merger between your actions and your awareness. The actions start to feel automatic and even effortless. You also lose your sense of self-consciousness, so your inner critic is silenced. This one is really key. I think sometimes we can get into an activity and we're busy thinking about what we can do better or what isn't right. So, of course, that isn't happening when you're in flow. You're not judging, you're just doing. I talked more about flow in a very early episode of the podcast on meditation. It's really different from meditation. They're not the same thing, but the way they're similar is that you're really in the moment. And a lot of people have trouble getting into the moment. So if that's you, you can listen to the episode on meditation for people who don't meditate. Now, when you're in a state of flow, your brain releases all sorts of pleasure neurochemicals: dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin. I'm not going to get into all the science and details around flow, but just to say that when you're in a state of flow, your creativity is amplified. Now, here's the challenge. How do we get into this state more often and more predictably? I'm going to go through a few things that will help you get into a flow state to improve your creativity. And the first thing I need to explain is that for most of us, it's not about doing more. It's also about doing less. Because I think what most of us don't do is slow down or rest effectively. If you've taken my quiz to figure out your decision personality, and especially if you're a driver or even a spinner, you might find it hard to slow down. These types of people are action-oriented. I am too. Now, I don't mean that we need to slow down and do nothing. I mean, we need to slow down to improve our performance and creativity. A lot of people think that productivity means to work harder, work more, never stop, and I'm guilty of that too. I'm the person who tries to meditate better, and then I get frustrated that I didn't do it right, and then I spend hours figuring out how to understand the science of meditation. But I've been really interested in how to improve performance in life, not just at work. It could be physical exercise, mental health, relationships, creative output. How do I do everything in life better? This is still performance. And this is what I mean about slowing down. It's actually necessary to improve not only your performance, but also your recovery and your brain patterns. I'm not going to get into all the brain waves and which ones are present during different activities, but I will say that how you slow down, how you relax matters. Watching TV, for example, something that I love to do, is not helpful when it comes to recharging your brain. Social media, something that I'm trying to get rid of. I did a few episodes on that recently. Also not a good way to recharge your brain. You need to take breaks that are recharging. A long walk, a shower, doing the dishes, dancing. I know it sounds funny, but your brain needs a literal break where you can be present and calm. This is why you might get good ideas when you're doing a relaxing activity where your mind can actually free flow, but you're also not bored. So if you're trying to improve your performance and creativity and do it on a more regular basis, here are a few things that can help you get into flow. First, work in 90 to 120-minute bursts. And this means uninterrupted concentration, no multitasking. And as I say this, I've tried it. It is not as easy as you think. We are such a task-switching society, interrupted by messages and people and laundry and whatever. Try to focus for an actual hour and a half to 2 hours. Or if you have a hard time doing that, just work your way up to it. Next, be in a state of focusing on an external task, not on your internal dialogue. The best example I can give you here is when I'm writing this book, which for me is a really challenging project, but also exciting. I've been trying to write what I'm calling a bad draft. Not that I want it to be bad, of course, just that for the first draft, I try to write without judging. I don't think about whether it's good or bad, or if I have to change the sentence or that word. Then I go back and edit later. It's the only way I can get into flow while writing because I'm not wondering if it's good or not, and I'm not judging myself while doing it. The next tip is to do it. In flow, there's a natural state of what's called the struggle phase. When you're getting into flow, it's when most people fall off or give up. So for example, for me, I'm forcing myself to write when I don't know what to write, and then eventually after a struggle phase, I get into it. You just have to get over that hump. Here's another example. When I'm biking or running, close to our house, there's a street that has a little tiny hill. It's very small. You would never even notice it if you're driving. But when you're riding your bike or running, you really notice that hill, and it is always hard. The first 10 minutes of any outdoor activity I do literally feels like an uphill battle. And I always think, what am I doing? And then when I pass this street, I'm okay. And I could continue for a while. So just think about getting past that first hill. Get past the struggle phase. The next tip is to love it. There is something about having your own project that you enjoy. If you're trying to get into flow for something you need to do, let's say you have a deadline for someone else, it's harder to get into flow without owning some part of that project, feeling the autonomy of creating and working on it yourself. So if it's not your own project, try to reframe it in your mind so that you actually enjoy it. If you're interested in the activity, you'll have an easier time getting into flow. The next one is novelty. When you're in a new environment, it stimulates your creativity. So you can move locations, chat with someone new, experience something differently that can help you create. Now, I know some people prefer structure and routine, so of course, do what works for you. But I know for me, novelty really helps me get my creative juices flowing. There's also something to be said about exposing yourself to different environments and different ways of thinking. It really helps with creativity. One tip that I've noticed, but I haven't yet seen in the research, is creating an emotionally safe and secure space. It probably relates to having autonomy that I talked about before, but I think that stress and distraction in life is hard to get away from when you have responsibilities weighing on your mind. If you can create a sense of safety and security away from what's always on your mind, that will help you stimulate your creative flow. This might be why so many people wake up early in the morning. Or when I talked to singer-songwriter Abon in a recent episode, she likes to create with the sun and in a space that makes her feel homey and stable, especially when she's on the road or traveling. So if you can find a space that feels calm and safe and secure, even if it's just a compartmentalized moment or location, If it creates those feelings for you, it would be easier to get into a flow state. Typically, for any creative project, you're trying to stretch yourself and make something that you have never done before, you've never seen before. It's outside of your comfort zone. So sometimes it can feel daunting. There needs to be a balance between what you want to accomplish and what you're able to do. If you start doubting yourself, you'll get out of flow and knock yourself out of the creative process. So you have to find the right support around you in your mind to move towards whatever you want to accomplish. So just to recap, work in 90 to 120 minute bursts. Be in a state of focusing on an external task and not your internal critic. Get past the struggle phase. Love what you're doing. And try to add some novelty or a new space. And if you can, try to separate yourself from the stress of life by creating a safe and secure environment. If you wanted to take notes, don't worry, you can find all my episodes on the website livingxo.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider writing a review on iTunes. I love knowing your takeaways and aha moments from each episode. And let me know if there's something you're working on that's your creative expression. Thank you for joining me. Take good care.